Hello and welcome to a new episode of That Fertile Feeling, the podcast. And I am here today with Rachel Jackson, who's an Ayurvedic practitioner specializing in women's health and hormones. I got connected to Rachel through a common friend, Clara, who runs Earthwise Yoga. It's sort of this feminine yoga school in Ireland. I met Clara during my abdominal teacher training, and she told me you definitely have to talk or have to interview Rachel because she knows so much about hormonal balance, Ayurveda, and really working with your cycle with the moon. But maybe I'll ask her to introduce herself rather than tell you all about her.
Oh,
So
that was good.
welcome.
That was good.
Welcome on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm Rachel, and I have been practicing Ayurveda in some capacity since 2008. Over my time of practicing Ayurveda, not only as for myself, but just in my practice and working with clients, it was a very organic and natural movement to start to focus on women's health and to work more specifically with women and also working with Clara. That was a big initiative because she asked me to start teaching Ayurveda for her yoga school. And then out of that process, all of these workshops were born and all of this new information came into my practice. So since 2018, I've
Mhm.
really been focusing on women and women's health and trying to help women as much as possible to come back home.
Mm. And what drew you to Ayurveda?
It's always the selfish reasons, isn't it? When I was 23, 24 years of age, I was struggling,
Mm.
really struggling. So I was struggling mentally, I was struggling physically, I was struggling emotionally, and nothing was working. So I was doing all of the tried and true, if you like. I was doing all the going to see this person, going to see that person. And I wasn't finding any answers and I wasn't getting any help. And unfortunately, I was getting worse. And so what happened was kind of a series of events where I started talking to people about the fact that I was struggling. And because I started talking about the fact that I was struggling, people that I was working with, friends at the time, just said, why don't you try something else?
Mm.
What you're doing is not working. You've got to try something else. And then over a series of events, I started researching everything. I started buying all different kinds of books, and then a series of events. I happened to move to Ireland
Mm.
in the middle of all this. So I transitioned. I was living in California, and then I moved to Ireland, and I happened to meet my husband in Ireland, and he handed me a book on Ayurveda,
Mm.
and he said, "I think this is what you're looking for," because I was looking for like a package.
Mhm.
I was getting bits and pieces of information from, okay, well, maybe I should eat this food, or maybe I should, cut this out of my diet, or maybe I should do this kind of exercise. And, I was getting confused along the way about what's really right for me.
Mhm.
And so he handed me this book and he said, I think this is what you're looking for. And when I opened that first Ayurveda book, it felt like home.
Mm.
It felt like, okay, this is the complete package that I've been looking for. These are the answers that I've been struggling to find. And it just felt as easy and natural as breathing.
Mm.
The way that Ayurveda talked about the body, the way that Ayurveda talked about the mind, the way that Ayurveda approached health. I just thought, okay, this fits like a glove.
Mm.
And after that, it just went from one training after another training
Mm.
after. So I just basically, since then, I have been either researching or training or practicing Ayurveda, and of course, applying it to myself.
Mm. And what was the biggest difference you noticed? You said you were doing all of these other things, all of these bits
Mhm.
and pieces, and then you found it almost sounds like you found a framework, like a framework for health.
Yes, that's exactly it. I found something that acknowledged that I was an individual.
Mm. Yeah.
I found something that recognized that who I am as an individual may need certain and specific things that not anybody else needs. So I found something that actually said, do you know what? If you eat the way that everybody else eats, it may not work for you. If you have a daily routine that is the same as everybody else, it may not work for you. It may actually make you worse. It may actually make your conditions worse. So that was the key nugget for me. This system of medicine recognizes that I'm an individual, and this system not only recognizes that I'm an individual, it gives me what I need as an individual. What is the food I'm supposed to be eating? What is my exercise routine that I'm supposed to be doing every week? What is the sleep? How much sleep should I be getting every single night? So it gave me that beautiful framework where I could start to treat myself and respect myself as an individual.
I love that you're saying that, because what I see, so I think it's a good thing on the one hand that on Instagram or, online, you can find so much information about hormonal health these days. On the other hand, I think that's a big pitfall for anyone who's on a fertility journey. It can get so easy to have sort of this checklist approach where you just take in all the information and you feel like you need to be doing all of these things, and it becomes so harsh and like this strict regimen.
Yeah.
And it's setting you up for failure because it's no way of living life, right?
Yeah. Because then you're thinking, I'm doing all the right things. Why isn't it working for me?
Yeah.
And
And
so
I'm taking all the supplements and
yes.
Yeah.
I'm ticking all the boxes.
Yeah.
And it's not working for me. And that to me was a real aha moment in recognizing I was doing all the right things, but I wasn't feeling better. And when I started doing Ayurveda, that's when I noticed the significant changes.
Do you remember like one or two things that you used to do that now that you know your Ayurvedic constitution, you're like, okay, that obviously that didn't work for me?
Ooh. I used to eat, this sounds so practical and a little bit mundane, but I used to eat lunch really, really late in the day, like past 3 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's something. And if I was too busy, I might skip lunch because I was busy doing things. So I'll just make it up later.
Yeah.
That is a habit that I had of not stopping to eat and nourish myself in the middle of the day. And there's a lot of Ayurvedic theory behind why we should never skip meals. And especially in the middle of the day, because our digestion is the highest in the middle of the day, according to Ayurveda. So that was the key change that I made. I can remember that being in my kitchen and just going, okay, I'm going to change this today. So my lunchtime backed up from 3 p.m. all the way, backed it up so that it was between 12 and 1. That is the first key change. And my energy levels and my digestion, immediately, there's a difference.
Yeah.
So that's the number one change I can remember. And then the other change would be, I have to say this is kind of an overall life approach, pushing myself, pushing, thinking that I should be able to do what that person can do, or pushing myself in exercise, or pushing myself when I'm too tired, not being able to stop, not being able to say it's enough for today. I think that, and I'm still working on that, but overall, that has been a major life change of being able to say, do you know what? I'm done.
Yeah.
My cup is empty. I need to stop. And so the less pushing and more accepting, definitely.
And
I
it
would
also
say.
sounds like taking the body seriously.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not mind over body.
No, no longer mind over matter approach. No, not at all. And I think the key area for me was exercise. That's where I switched it immediately, was in how I was exercising. That's the first place I started to change the pushing.
Yeah.
But then that had the knock-on effect in all the other things that I was doing, how I was approaching my day to day and looking at, am I actually depleted here? Am I done? Do I need to step back now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And I
Mm.
know that you're a mom, so I was wondering whether, yeah, this life change also had an impact on your journey towards motherhood.
Yeah. Um, and looking back, it's hard to pinpoint because Ayurveda was so enmeshed in my early days of being a mom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to pinpoint because in those early days when you are 24/7 and you are doing all the feeding and you're doing all the changing and but Ayurveda was very much there because I started researching and studying and looking into Ayurveda before I got pregnant with my first son.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, because it felt so natural and it just brought me back to a sense of acceptance with myself, I didn't want to let it go, even though I'd become a new mother, and even though it was chaos, and even though sometimes I hadn't slept for days or baby hadn't slept, I didn't want to let it go. So more and more and more, it became the foundation that supported me as a mother. It became, okay, what do I need to do for myself, even though I'm looking after baby? It became the reminder that I cannot forget myself,
Mm-hmm.
even though I'm a new mother. So it was, for me, it was very much about becoming the support system that I needed as a mother. And then it's something that I applied all the way through. Even after my son was born, I continue to apply the principles, but I did them in practical ways.
Mm-hmm.
I did what I could according to that day. And then with my other two children, it was very much looking into, especially when I was pregnant with my third child. That's when I became really interested in what does Ayurveda have to offer to pregnancy? What do I need to be doing for myself? What do I need to be surrounding myself with
Mm-hmm.
during this pregnancy? What is it that I need right now? And what is it that I need to not have in my life
Mm-hmm.
right now? That's a good question to ask.
Yeah.
But then also the postnatal phase. What kind of care do I need after having my baby? And I leaned heavily on Ayurveda
Mm.
to answer those questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're touching on a really crucial point here. I
Mm.
always tell women who are having trouble conceiving, yeah, you cannot control whether you get pregnant or not. The only thing you can control is how well you take care of yourself along the way. And once you start developing that self-care regime now, it won't just be for your fertility journey, it will be for your pregnancy, postpartum,
Yes.
motherhood. It will set the stage
Yes.
for every phase of
Yeah.
motherhood in your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
really use it in that way, trying to learn to feel into what is good for me right now. Let that be the,
Yes.
the guiding principle.
Because I do think as mothers, we have to have a foundation. We
Mm,
do have to have some kind of anchor in our lives because having babies and raising kids, there is no guarantee.
mhm,
And we have very little control over what happens, during our pregnancy, during the labor, even as we're raising our children. We have very little control of what we're going to need to meet that day. What situation are we going to need to rise to?
mhm,
But for me, the Ayurveda is what kept me stable and kept me grounded so that I could roll with whatever was happening,
mm,
whatever changes, whatever chaos, whatever, if
mm,
there was sickness, whatever it was, that foundation kept me and also kept me very present.
mm,
It kept me present, which I'm very grateful for.
mm. And what are some of the basic principles of Ayurveda that helped you, like with a view to women's health and hormones, maybe specifically?
Hmm. Okay, so Ayurvedic principles. So one of the key principles in Ayurveda is balancing the doshas. So that is key. Whatever, whoever you choose to work with as a practitioner or as a teacher or as a therapist, we always look at and assess the doshas as one of the foundations that's critical for health. So in Ayurveda, we have this concept that if a dosha goes out of balance, then we're going to start to experience symptoms.
Mm,
We're going to start to experience some unease. Maybe they're small to begin with. Maybe they're teeny tiny, well, In Ayurveda, I have to say there are no small red flags.
Mm.
I think in other systems, we allow for things. I'll give you an example for headaches, for example. If someone is having reoccurring headaches, in
Mm.
Ayurveda, that is a massive red flag. But if you talk to perhaps other people who practice other types of medicine, they may say, well, sure, that's just you're stressed.
Mm.
Take this or take that. You're stressed. And that can be part of it. But Ayurveda goes, hold on a minute. That is a red flag. That
Mm.
is your body communicating to you that in Ayurvedic theory, one or two of the doshas has gone out of balance. And so this concept for me of actually paying attention and listening and really being clued in to what are the symptoms of a dosha going out of balance. And when I notice those within myself, then I immediately have got to put my protocols into place, or I've got to do what I know that I need to do for myself to start to manage that dosha immediately, so that it isn't left for a long period of time, getting worse,
Mm.
becoming more aggravated, creating more chaos in the body. And then we get the full-blown what we would say is a disease,
Mm.
when you end up with the diagnosis. But Ayurveda would say, don't let it go that far.
Mm.
Step in immediately, intervene. And I really love that about Ayurveda, not only for me,
Mm.
but for women. When you start to just, like I said, pay attention, the body will communicate to you. And if you know how the doshas work and you know the signs of a dosha going out of balance,
Mm-hmm.
then you can step in, you can intervene yourself, you can treat yourself, you can work with yourself, you can bring yourself back to balance. And that to me is really empowering, is being able to say, you know what, I know what's going on here and I know what I need to do to bring myself back.
Mm.
And the other one was because I had so many problems in my digestive system early on in my 20s. The concept of Agni in Ayurveda for me has been brilliant in learning how Agni works. Agni in Ayurveda is fire,
Mm-hmm.
specifically digestive fire, but Agni is your capacity to digest and transform.
Mm.
And I really love this concept in Ayurveda that we have both the capacity not only to digest,
Mm-hmm.
but also to transform. And in Ayurveda, that's everything. That's not just the food you eat.
Mm-hmm.
That's your thoughts. That's your feelings. That's your experiences. That's your memories, even. So in Ayurveda, we're talking about that we have the capacity within us because of Agni to be able to actually digest life.
Mm.
And this, to me, I've always gone back to physically
Mm-hmm.
looking at, okay, is my Agni working? Is my digestive working? What do I need to do to help if it's not? But also looking at, am I digesting that? Really?
Mm.
Or is, because we all have those experiences of we have an interaction with somebody and 5 years later, we're still thinking about it.
Mm.
Or we have something that's happened in our life and 2 years later, we're still thinking about it. And so in Ayurveda, that's because it hasn't been fully digested and it's creating a residue. And so when we start to work with Agni
Mm.
on all levels and what Agni is meant to do, we're able to kind of meet life and accept life and digest life as it comes to us,
Mm.
rather than being burdened by,
Mm.
there's none of that toxic residue
Sounds like
left over.
activating your inner phoenix.
Yes, yes, yes. Transform.
Transform.
Let's transform. Why be stuck in a place that we no longer need to be in? Let's transform. Let's take that experience. Let's take whatever that is. Let's use it. Let's digest it. Let's transform it.
Yeah.
You do it with food, but you do it with everything. And so life is then a constant transformation.
Sounds beautiful.
Mm.
But what do you do? Because I can immediately think of 500 situations that I still haven't processed.
Yeah, that's what happens, isn't it? The catalog starts going in the brain. Do you remember that? Do you remember
Uh,
that? Do you
uh,
Yeah.
so what do you do when you're stuck in an emotion or just when you have that
Well,
resentment?
so one of the key things in Ayurveda is awareness. Okay. And if so, I'm going to use food as a metaphor because food's easy, right? And I love how Ayurveda describes some of these key spiritual concepts through the practical. For me, that works. It just makes sense to me. So if you take the example of you're going to sit down and you're going to eat a meal. And you're going to, so whatever the meal is, you're going to sit down and you're going to consume this meal and hopefully digest this meal. In Ayurveda, it's about how the food was cooked, what kind of food it is, what time of the day that you're eating. It's about all of that. It's also whether or not, where's your awareness? Are you fully present? Is your awareness on that food or is your awareness somewhere else? Because in Ayurveda, the energy follows our awareness. So if I'm sitting down in front of a plate of food, but my brain is locked onto something that I have to do next week, or if my brain is locked on something that I did last week, if my brain, if my awareness is split and I'm actually leaving the situation, then there's not going to be any energy, any Agni present for me to digest this food. So the very first step, if you want to digest something, bring your awareness to it and stay. Because most of us, when the catalog starts going in the brain of, oh my God, that happened 5 years ago, the very first thing to do is bring our awareness to it without judgment, without the shame or the guilt or without the anger, whatever it is, just bring our awareness to it, just see it. And then we bring our presence to it, as in allowing ourselves to explore, well, what really happened? What did I actually feel? Is it okay for me to have those feelings? Can I allow myself to experience those feelings? It doesn't matter if it was 20 years ago. Because like I said, if we don't digest it, it stays with us. So it's never too late to digest something. There's never a sell-by date on being able to digest our life and what's happened to us. So I think the very first step is awareness, and then being able to actually enter into it and allow ourselves the presence of being there. What did I actually feel? What did I actually experience? Can I actually allow this to rise up? And then the digestion immediately follows. Because so wherever your energy is, if you're allowing yourself to rise up, your Agni is going to kick in. See, the thing with Ayurveda, there's lots of things that we can do, but Ayurveda says we're custom built for digestion, especially the liver, for example. So to me, it's bring your awareness, bring your presence, and then let your body do what it was built to do, which is start to break it down and digest it.
Yeah.
But if we reject it, so if I hand you a plate of food and you immediately reject it, you're not going to be able to digest it.
Yeah.
But if we allow ourselves to stay and not reject, we bring our awareness, we bring our presence, we allow whatever it is that needs to rise up, let it rise up, and then let our body do what it is designed to do, to start digesting. And I think a lot of times it starts without us thinking.
Just creating that space.
Yeah.
It also reminds me, like I just did an episode about embracing your menstrual week as really a place in your cycle where you can, on the one hand, just find that deep rest. It can be a really restorative week if you take that week to sort of step back and take it easy. But also go to those deeper layers, especially I feel when you're trying to conceive, because it can be so painful to get your period and to really use that pain to sink.
Yes.
Create space for grief and see what other grief wants to come up. Is that something that's that you practice within Ayurveda as well, or is
Yes.
there a focus on
Yes.
the menstrual cycle? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
Yes. Yes. And this is what really got me excited, even though this came later in my practice. Like I said, teaching those workshops for Clara's school, and who shows up? Women.
Mhm.
So organically, I started to think, how am I actually going to present Ayurveda for women? What actually is Ayurveda for women? And then, of course, you've got to start to look at the menstrual cycle, because the menstrual cycle is so key. And then you start to look at the doshas that rule the phases of the menstrual cycle. And then you start to look at the doshas that actually control the hormones. So if you look at it, that second phase of the menstrual cycle, it's Pitta that rules that phase, but it's Pitta looking after progesterone. And then you start looking at, but what is it that we're actually supposed to be doing?
Mhm.
And when you look at it in an Ayurveda, will say, well, in that phase, in that second half of your cycle, you're supposed to be preparing whatever it is that you want to burn.
Mm.
Because that's what Pitta is. Pitta is fire, and Pitta controls the second half of the menstrual cycle. So in that phase, that's where, again, like you were saying, if you allow yourself to go into those spaces, you can see what it is actually, okay, I need to hand this over to the fire. I need to hand this over. I need to let this burn.
Mm.
And so absolutely, I could talk for hours about this. So I don't know. How
Well,
do you?
maybe a good first question to ask you is, you mentioned the doshas before, so you just mentioned
Mhm.
Pitta as one. So what are these
Yes.
doshas? And maybe then we can tie
Okay.
that into a discussion of the menstrual cycle a bit more.
So three doshas in Ayurveda, Vata being air and ether. Okay. So in Ayurveda, the doshas are composed of the elements. So everything that has manifested as physical requires a dosha. Okay. So whether that be literally the air or the water or the trees, but when you get to the human being, because we are very complex, all three doshas are involved. So, but the doshas are the elements. And when it comes to walking around in this human body, it's the elements made manifest into a human being. So the doshas, they are the five great elements. They are composed of the five great elements. And like I said, the five great elements have created everything that exists. It's
Mm.
the five great elements are the building blocks of the universe.
Mm.
So when we talk about Vata, then we're talking about air and ether. And if we're talking about Pitta, then we're talking about fire, a little bit of water,
Mm.
just enough water to keep it from burning out of control.
Mm.
And Kapha is earth and water.
Mm.
So there's a mix there with Kapha, which is both equally earth and water. So these doshas, everyone walking around has all three doshas, because like I said, you have to have three doshas to have this human body. The three doshas are required to build this beautiful human body. When it comes to the female body and looking at Ayurveda for women's health, it's really, really important to pay attention to Vata dosha, because Vata dosha controls so many of the key functions of a woman's body. First one, menstrual cycle. So Vata dosha, when I was saying if a dosha goes out of balance,
Mhm.
you need to do something to correct it. Well, Vata dosha controls the menstrual cycle.
Mm.
So if Vata dosha is working well, our menstrual cycle will be working well. But that has a knock-on effect, of course, on our fertility.
Mm.
If you look at the menstrual cycle as a whole, we have Vata is like the overall manager.
Mhm.
So Vata is the boss. He
Mm.
controls the menstrual cycle. But the first half of the menstrual cycle is the Kapha stage. Kapha is in charge of the very first, from day 0 to day 14, because Kapha is earth and
Mm.
Kapha is in charge of building.
Mm.
And if you're going to build a beautiful lining in the womb, whatever you need to build for this particular cycle, whatever needs to be created, whatever we need to produce, that's all up to Kapha. So that's the first half of the cycle. And then, like I said, the second half of the cycle is Pitta.
Mm.
Pitta is fire. Pitta is also in charge of digestion and transformation.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that Pitta is involved in the second half is because if we don't conceive that menstrual cycle and we get ready to lose that lining, well, Pitta is in charge of breaking that down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's its job. But like I said, it's also in charge of asking us to slow down and ask the question, what do you want to put in the fire?
Mm-hmm.
So overall, it's Vata dosha. Vata controls the menstrual cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Vata also controls our experience of menopause. Vata also controls our experience of pregnancy and labor.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to women's health, Vata dosha is key. Understanding how it works, understanding when it goes out of balance, and then understanding what to do about it if you think that it's gone out of balance. Because so Vata really is in charge of these key functions. It's menstrual cycle, it's fertility, it's pregnancy, it's labor, it's menopause. Vata is the one that controls all of those things.
It reminds me of something you said earlier, like there are red flags, or Ayurveda sees things as red flags. And it reminded me of in our abdominal therapy training, we talked about what a regular cycle looks like and how so many of us, or a regular period even.
Yeah.
How so many of us, we don't even know what a regular period is. So I can imagine that that would also be then a big red flag in Ayurveda, having maybe only bleeding for 1 or 2 days, or having a very heavy period, having clotting. Are those things you would look at?
Yes, I spend the majority of a first-time consultation, if I can, speaking just about the menstrual cycle, because it gives me so many clues about what's going on with all three doshas. So I'm getting so much information about how all three doshas are functioning or not. I'm getting so much information on what's happening in their hormones. But also the menstrual cycle, according to Ayurveda, there is no pain. And any pain. So a lot of times I ask the question, do you have any pain? And a lot of times I get the shrugged shoulders. Well, not like I'm not collapsing with it. I'm not in bed with it.
It's a regular pain.
Yeah. I don't need to take 2 painkillers.
Yeah.
But my question is, do you have any pain? Because pain is the #1 indicator that Vata dosha has gone out of balance. And so it is a massive red flag. It is a huge red flag. Please stop. Let's do some Vata management. Let's look at what's going on in your daily routine. Let's look at what's going on. We've got to do something to correct Vata dosha, because if you're experiencing pain, that is the #1 indicator that Vata dosha has gone out of balance. And then, of course, clots, heavy bleeding, too low of bleeding, like you said, 1 or 2 days. That's not a normal cycle according to Ayurveda. Any headaches, any lower back pain, severe moodiness. All of those things women are experiencing, but according to Ayurveda, they are signs that the doshas have gone out of balance. It's not a normal cycle. When the doshas go back into balance, those things disappear. And you don't have to have that experience on a monthly basis, which means you can get into those deeper practices, which is what you mentioned about really slowing down in the second phase of the cycle. And if you're not, if you're not overwhelmed with pain, or if you're not overwhelmed with headaches, if you're not overwhelmed with nausea or vomiting, or any of those things that can happen in the second phase, you can really tune in and do that deeper work.
Yeah. So you mentioned that Vata is really important in that overall balance of the cycle. What are some of the things that create an imbalance in Vata, just in general terms?
I say this, and it is the #1 answer, and I always feel like people aren't going to take me serious when it's stress. But who has a stress-free life? But even in Ayurveda, we define stress. And so stress in Ayurveda is wrong food. If you're eating the wrong food for you, and if you're eating at the wrong time, that's stress. Wrong routine or no routine at all. relationship stress. So that can be, are you in a stressful relationship with friends, family, partner? Are you in a stressful relationship with yourself? What is your relationship with yourself? And Ayurveda even says wrong relationship with self is considered to be very stressful. And then there's over exercising or not correct exercising according to what is needed for you as an individual. And then there's just day-to-day stress. So the very first thing to look at in Ayurveda is to look at someone's daily routine and to see what can we do on a day-to-day basis to start to correct Vata dosha if the stress levels are way too high. Whether that's wrong food, whether that's wrong routine, whether that's wrong exercise, that's where we start to look at what can I do here to help Vata dosha to get rid of these elements of stress. Because we can't control what happens to us when we walk out the door. There's certain stress that we just have just as soon as we walk out the door. But there are things that we can do to get rid of other stressors. So that's where we always start, especially when it comes to women's health.
And it really ties in with some of the other conversations I've recently had on the podcast about stress even affecting us. So we know like stress affects your sleep, which affects your fertility. It affects your digestion, which affects your fertility. But even at DNA level, we know that certain genes are turned on and off by stress. So this is, I know like no one benefits from people saying just relax and you'll get pregnant, but we do need to take that stress. Or we do need to look seriously at what is going on in your system. Like what are that's another thing that came up in the podcast. It's not about like having a fight at work, not that kind of stress, but really looking at what's going on underneath the surface, what is sort of simmering, those stressors you want to get at.
Well, and then, I forgot to mention that another one of this, when it comes to wrong relationship with self, part of wrong relationship with self is repressed emotions. Not giving ourselves space and time and enough compassion to be able to express and explore our emotions, which is incredibly stressful for the female body, not to be able to express when she needs to express, or not being able to just even explore her emotional side. That in Ayurveda is defined as stress. And so when you said simmering under the surface, it's how much space and time do we give ourselves to go into, okay, yeah, well, maybe that person really did make me angry, but what's underneath that? And that's considered stressful as well.
Super important theme, I feel. I was wondering, because I know that you also connect this work to natural cycles and cycles of the moon. So is there a way you can work with those cycles, especially when it comes to lowering your stress levels or balancing your Vata?
I would highly recommend it, because if you look at the cycles of nature, what are they? The cycles of nature are the great elements. What are we made of? The great elements. So for me, it's just absolutely. It's like, to me, it is part of the healing journey for any woman who is looking to work on her health, is to align with what she's naturally made of. So like, we talk about the 5 great elements, but the 5 great elements is, of course, the moon being one of them. And so when we really start to align with what has the ingredients that has made up our body, if we get in sync with that, with how they are existing on the outside, that's medicine in itself. But for the moon, I find, because our hormones so beautifully mimic the moon, the way that the moon works, the way that the moon is, the moon goes very dark. She completely disappears. There's no sign of her And then there's this rebirth that happens when she reappears. And then she allows herself to go full again. She is at the height of her power. She illuminates the night sky. But if you look at how our hormones work, what our hormones actually ask us and do for us, well, estrogen is that rebirth.
Mm.
Estrogen is stepping out of the dark. Estrogen is the rebuilding. Estrogen is, okay, I'm ready to be full of light. I'm ready to be fully seen. I'm ready to be at the height of my power. I'm ready to be sexually at the, to have the height of my sexuality during this phase. So to me, that clicked in very almost immediately when I was reading about what estrogen did to us as women. I was going, but that's exactly what the moon does. Or the moon does exactly what estrogen does, however you want to frame it. So to me, it's like, okay, why not hook up with and work with this guiding planet that is asking us, that is mirroring back to us how we should be working as women.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it just made sense. Like progesterone is the hormone that asks us to go quiet. It slows us down. It prepares us to get ready to go into the dark. It says it's okay if you actually step away from your life. It's okay if you're not seen. It's okay if you actually withdraw so that you can do the deeper inner work. That's progesterone. And that's what the moon does as she goes from her waxing, as she prepares to go dark again. That's what she beautifully does. So to me, the moon represents what we as females have been born to do, which is this beautiful rebirth every single month, allowing ourselves to go dark, coming out the other end and rebirthing what it is, whatever it is that we put in the fire, then that's gone. We don't need to carry that into the next cycle.
Yeah.
Gone. We've transformed it. So then we can rebirth something new. So that for me, I think it changed my perception of being female. When I linked the hormones to the moon and the moon to the hormones, it completely blew open my perception of what it is to be female. And I went, this is just incredible.
So how do you work with the moon in practical terms? What does it look like? Do you just sort of tune into the moon every day, or?
I am, so at the moment, and this is what I do, I do really encourage this of any of my female clients that are working with me, is actually get your cycle to line up with the moon so that you're bleeding on the new moon and that you're ovulating with the full moon. And so there are things that I do actually suggest and that I do offer, as in this will help you line up your cycle with the moon. For me, it is about recognizing where am I at in both my cycle and where is the moon. So I'm recognizing both simultaneously. So right now I'm in my estrogen phase, for example. So I'm also aware that we have just passed out of a new moon, which was a fairly potent and powerful moon. And so I'm very aware, okay, I'm in my estrogen phase and also the moon, she's growing in strength. So what is it that I want to communicate or express? What is it that I want to work on? What is it that I want to build? So I see in terms of my own personal behavior, especially creative, like what it is I want to do creatively, I always try to put that in the estrogen phase. Because like I said, the estrogen is custom built for that. So why not use the estrogen, which is giving me extra creativity, inspiration, the confidence, self-esteem? Why not tap into that and work with that and then use that to work on whatever it is that I want to build? So that's how I look at my first 14 days. This is what I'm going to do in my estrogen phase. And then, of course, I change my routine. So I change the food that I'm eating. I change my exercise. So I'm a little more vigorous in exercise in the first 14 days. I'm very aware of my sleep because I don't want to be sleep deprived during my estrogen phase.
Mm.
I'm very aware of taking every advantage I can to be more social, to be whatever I can to mix with people and to meet up with people, because again, I'm in my estrogen phase. So I'm actually feeling the need to connect.
Mm.
And so I try to meet that.
Mm.
And then my second phase, I'm very aware, okay, this is where I'm at in my phase. Perhaps I'm not going to go out to dinner. Perhaps I'm not going to accept that invitation. Perhaps these feelings that I'm having aren't something that I should ignore.
Mm.
Perhaps this is where I need to get in and do some work. Perhaps I need to just acknowledge this. So my second phase of the cycle is very much about the slowing down, withdrawing if I need to, changing my food. So I'll
Mm.
change my food to support my progesterone phase. I do not exercise as vigorously during my progesterone phase. Very, very aware of alone time
Mm.
in my progesterone phase. And whenever I can, allowing myself to have alone time.
Mm.
Going to bed a bit earlier. And then especially going up to the new moon, preparing whatever it is that I think I'm ready to put into the fire, preparing whatever that is in whatever form works for me, whether that's visual or writing it down or creating something, and
Mm.
then doing something when my period actually comes that aligns with that letting go.
Mm. Very inspiring. Thanks for sharing that.
That, well,
Yeah.
like I said, when for me as a woman, when I really start to get into what's happening with our hormones every single cycle and what the hormones have actually gifted us with, the
Mhm.
abilities that our hormones have actually gifted us with.
Mhm.
To me, it was like, here's the opportunity for me as a woman to transform every single month.
Mm.
That's what it meant for me. I was like, oh, whoa. So here is my body has given me these abilities, and I can actually transform every single month just by paying attention
Mm.
to my cycle.
Yeah.
And as a female, I can tap into all these other aspects of myself that previously I wasn't even working with
Yeah.
because I wasn't working with and aligning with my cycle. To me, it's just this natural way of evolving that our body is beautifully built to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to preface this by saying that I'm not actively trying to conceive right now, but ever since I started working with my cycle, I found that menstruation now actually is my favorite time of the month because it really, I can go so deep.
Yeah.
And maybe you probably notice this when you look at me. So I am Pitta, like almost
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm very fiery. I have a
Yeah.
strong drive, etc. So I think that actually menstruation for me really offers also that balance by creating space for, yeah, that very deep, airy. I would describe it as an airy time. Like
Yeah.
the veil is very thin. You see other worlds,
Yes.
visions. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's tapping into all of these abilities that we naturally have as women. I saw a proverb just about 2 days ago that said women are shamans.
Mm.
Just
Yeah.
point blank, women are shamans.
Hmm.
And I went, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because that's what we're built to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
This ability to go into the dark and to recover whatever it is that's in the dark that needs to be transformed,
Hmm.
the ability to transform it into something new, that's what we do every single month. Our womb completely transforms every single month.
Hmm.
So to me, it's like, well, let's get in, let's do that.
Hmm.
How incredible is that?
Yeah. And then I would say, especially a fertility journey, which can be so dark. That's
Yes.
that's been my own journey, is that it taught me how to be with the dark and to embrace the dark. And that's
Wow.
how you find your power.
Because there is no birth without first death in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at how nature works, there is no spring without first the winter.
Yeah.
I'm saying generally now,
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking, we avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
We run away, we're repulsed by it, we don't want anything to do with it. But if we look at how nature works, she dies.
Mm-hmm.
She goes like winter is winter, nothing grows. She is not her usual beautiful blooming self. The moon enters into that dark phase. The moon enters into a death phase. I am no longer this. But out of that comes birth.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at all the tales that have come about all these amazing goddesses, if you look at all these stories that we've had about all the different goddesses from all the different times, all of them have that same journey of going deep into the dark so that they can actually come out reborn.
Yeah.
That there is a process that we go through that actually enables us, allows us to give birth.
Mm-hmm. It's the feminine way.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is what it is to be female.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Rachel, for a beautiful conversation. And I immediately see like an Instagram post with the dark, is it called the dark of void moon or the like the day before the new moon? What's that phase called?
Oh, she's waning. I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's
It's a
not coming.
complete darkness, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh, that's where you can find your inspiration for your fertility journey. That's
Yes.
where you're stuck right now. You're in the void.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you can work with that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the material. In,
Yeah.
in that darkness, you will find the light, the inspiration, the knowledge, the wisdom you need to surface. When you come back up and you
Yeah.
surface, you'll come with you. You will bring that up to the surface when you need to, what is it that I need to do
Yeah.
in- to approach this fertility journey or whatever it is we want to birth, but yes, for
Yeah.
fertility.
Yeah. What would be your general message for anyone who's dealing with fertility issues and or pregnancy loss? Or would that be it?
Ooh, so much I could answer to that. Overall, yes, presence. Overall, I would say bring your presence. Um, don't get if you don't mind me saying, don't box this journey as a fertility journey, but phrase it more as a becoming
Mm,
journey. If we get really laser locked into fertility and how fertile am I, and am I, like you said, is this the month? Is this the month? Will I be pregnant? And I understand that. But if we can start to look at this entire journey of going through the transitions and the phases of being a woman as the becoming, and start looking at this is your becoming journey. What do you want? Who do you want to become as a mother? Who do you want to become as a person? And really bring your presence to your body. First and foremost, of course, bring your presence to your routine, bring your presence to your self-care, bring your presence to your food, bring your presence back to yourself. And really feel into, where is it that I'm still not meeting myself?
mm,
Where is it that I'm still absent from myself? And if we start working in that way, whether that be, for me, I said something simple, skipping lunch.
mm,
It
yeah.
can be as small as that, but start looking at, where am I not really with myself, supporting myself, present with myself? And if we take the pressure off the goal, if you don't mind me saying,
Mm,
which is conceiving,
mm,
but also include that along this way, it's not just about conceiving the baby and birth of the baby. It's also about conceiving you and the birth of you, and that this is your journey just as much, and it's your becoming just as much. And there's so much that can be discovered through this journey. And if the goal is fertility, what led me on this path was the journey of menopause.
Mm-hmm.
That's what cracked me open.
Mm.
So it doesn't matter whether it's fertility or menopause, or if you allow yourself to get in there and start working with all these aspects of your body and yourself, and then allow whatever is going to unfold, I think that's a far more holistic approach, and perhaps tapping more into the fact that we are naturally medicine women, we are naturally shamans. We can, when we bring our awareness and our presence to ourselves, to this journey of becoming fully female, fully embodied woman, and if fertility is part of it, fantastic. I think so much more unfolds from that way of approaching it, rather than take your supplements on time, check your temperature on time. Do you see what I'm saying?
Definitely. No, I get really emotional even when you say it. I can really feel that, if anyone's open to this message, that this is such a transformative message.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Where can people find out more about you and your work if they want to work with you?
I'm on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on Facebook. I have a website, anadiayurveda.com.
Yeah.
Easiest and quickest way, email me. I do online consultations, so we can work online. I do a women's health package that I offer, that women can work from literally A to Z, no matter where they are in their life, whether it's just looking at menstrual cycle, fertility, perimenopause, menopause, can be applied to any woman at any stage. And yes, I do work with fertility, so it can specifically be tailored for fertility. Yeah, so I work online, and I do offer the women's health package, and I do also, just this year, I put together a coaching package for women who want to explore that becoming, that transformation journey, who want to get into what's simmering beneath the surface, who want to look at those other factors that are down there in the subconscious, and we just need to give them attention and awareness and bring them to the light. So that is something that I launched in September.
Okay.
Easiest way is send me an email.
So I'll put your website in the show notes, your Facebook, your Instagram, and your email address as well.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'll do that then. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for a beautiful conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks also to the listeners for tuning in this week. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Instagram at thatfertilefeeling, or email me at francoise@thatfertilefeeling.com. I always love to hear from you and always get back to you, and hope to see you back in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.